It is finally time for part 2 of the 2026 LTT 30-day Linux Challenge. Now, you don't have to be much of a mathematician, of a science man, to know that we are well past the 30-day mark. I don't control when they upload videos, so take that up with LTT. Now, as with last time, as with the previous year, I have already seen the video, so what we're here to do is basically provide commentary on what was done and sort of talk through the problems they had to make sure you don't run into them yourself. So, with that out of the way, let us take a look.
The Linux Challenge 2026 edition was supposed to be a 3-part series.
The setup, a task-off challenge episode testing day-to-day usability, and a conclusion.
But then the first week was full of so many unexpected highs and lows.
We knew there had to be another video, especially after the Linux community exploded after I picked Pop! OS again.
There were people out there who legitimately thought that this video series, all of Linus's coverage of Linux, was basically a psyop to create hatred of Linux. I don't think that's the case. I think Linus just ran into a lot of problems. But I can see how people got to the conclusion when you compared it with both Elijah and with Luke.
And while Luke and I seem to have been praised for our choices, I can tell you guys firsthand that it has not been a smooth ride for me.
I think the difference with both Elijah and Luke, firstly, Luke is a Linux user. Luke uses Arch, right? It, of course, is going to go well for him. But with Elijah as well, I think it felt like they were both taking the challenge seriously, whereas with Linus, he was installing Linux at a LAN whilst people were in the game lobby waiting for him. This was a stressful environment. It's not the environment to install something that you're not really comfortable installing. So a lot of people just felt like, you know, what are you even doing? Are you just like, is this a joke to you, basically?
Meanwhile, things were going so great for me, I decided to dip my toes even further, attempting some more complex tasks that I didn't expect to go super well, just to see what would happen.
And I ended up trying some other distros, which
I really wish we could stop talking about SteamOS on generic hardware. SteamOS is specifically set up for the handheld, for a few other handhelds, for the Steam machine, for the Steam frame. It is not a generic distro. You are going to run into additional problems by trying to force SteamOS onto random other hardware. Don't get me wrong, you can make it work, but even Valve is not recommending you go and do that. Apologies for the freeze frame, Linus. Anyway.
I feel like I've got to start this by explaining my brain-dead choice of Pop! OS. It was amazing how many people got angry at me for picking the same distro that screwed me over last time. But if you guys remember, I actually used Manjaro last time after I was assured that the bug that I encountered when I was setting up Pop! OS was a one-time fluke.
That was a one-time fluke. There's just other new bugs. I do think it would have been interesting to try out something different. Not because just don't use Pop! OS, but because there are other distros out there, and I think it would have just made better content to do something else.
And then I got piled on for being so quick to abandon it. So this is me putting aside my past experience after seeing so many people, listicles, and chatbots that still recommend it.
The chatbots, which I believe are still saying that Pop! OS ships GNOME. This isn't something anyone like outside of Linux would immediately know, but there is a lot of bad information out there about distros, outdated information, and it is hard to sort through if you don't already know about Linux.
That willingness to try again is a good thing for Linux. I mean, if everybody bailed after one bad experience, there would be no distros left to try. Nothing is perfect, and unfortunately, that goes especially for Pop! OS. System76 has spent the last couple of years hard at work on a new desktop environment, Cosmic, and it's been a challenge.
It's a lot better than it used to be, but yes, even I, the biggest Cosmic shill, even I am having some wavering thoughts about it at this point.
Linus, Cosmic is basically in beta. Don't you know that it's not ready yet?
No, I didn't. For one thing, where does it say that? The thing that I downloaded was called LTS, or long-term support. That's like the opposite of beta. I would have had to journey to a random blog post from back in September of 2025 to discover that Cosmic is now in public beta.
Okay, so this is going to be a recurring problem throughout the video. This one I actually will kind of fault Linus for. So that's not true. It was true at the time, but it's also not just September 2025 anymore. So on the Cosmic website, PopOS 2404 LTS release, this is December of that same year. This did release, and also Cosmic is out of beta now. However, I do understand why you would be confused with some of the problems that still do exist with Cosmic. It is technically not beta. Should it still be labeled beta? Oh, I honestly, I kind of think so in many ways.
Number 2, maybe this is a hot take, but maybe if System76, a commercial entity, not a random open source contributor, knows that it's not ready for prime time, instead of blaming me, we should probably blame the company that shipped it. And you know what? Yeah, I could have come across some of the Linux YouTube channels that have highlighted these issues, but a key element of the Linux challenge.
Do note that was showing 2204 LTS. That was the prior version quite a while ago.
Is highlighting that unless you know to ask the question, is this distro's desktop environment in beta? It can be hard for new Penguin curious users to find the right answers. So as we keep going, it's important to think of the Linux challenge not as an attack on Linux, but as more of a pen test for how friendly it is to newbies.
So again, not beta, but one thing you will see often in the FOSS world is that a 1.0 release is effectively an extended beta. Now, again, I cannot fault Linus for not knowing that because that is not at all obvious by the way the numbering is done. It is not an expectation from the proprietary software world. When you see a 1.0, you expect that to be a solid release version. This is something you kind of have to intuit and learn over time, that version numbers don't really mean anything, and it's a lot better to go and watch videos and read articles and sort of learn about the current experience rather than just, oh, it says it's fully released, I think it is ready. Also, that mess back there is even worse than mine.
My Bazzite adventure started a bit better than Linus at first. But if you remember in part 1, I mounted my SMB share. I was shocked at how easy it was to find, because normally on Windows, I would have to type in the address bar and find it. Versus on Bazzite, I just clicked on network and it found it right away. But I didn't realize that that wasn't mounting it. That was just creating a shortcut.
So I don't do the whole network share thing. It's just not my thing. Anyway. I did a bit of digging around about this problem. I came across this video from Michael Horn. Basically, Katie has some weird behavior with network drives. I don't really understand it. The default way only properly works with KDE applications, so the best bet to dealing with mounting a network drive is circumventing KDE altogether, doing things from the terminal, and dealing with it like that. But the problem there is the document is kind of all over the place. There's like Reddit posts and forum posts and videos that go over this, but this is not properly well explained anywhere you might sensibly look.
This means my read and write permissions were all over the place, and I couldn't save some files to my network drive if I clicked on that shortcut. To solve this, I had to do some Googling, and I found out that I needed to modify my FS tab.
Which is not actually the entirety of what you need to do. That is one of the steps you need to do.
File to point the network location to the MNT folder on my drive.
But you're already seeing like the point I'm making here, right? Like the information for this is just all over the place. And again, I cannot fault Elijah for not knowing that, because even someone who's experienced with Linux is going to run into problems with this.
So I did that, but then I noticed that I had two, both of which were still behaving like a shortcut. I tried at least a dozen different options in order to mount the share correctly, none of which ultimately succeeded. or should have even been necessary if you ask me. Opening context menus on icons, shortcuts, or applications is a great tool, and it seems like a big oversight on the Bazzite team.
Not the Bazzite team on KDE, but I do agree.
To not include a quick mount option that just works. Instead, I want to F-stab myself in the head.
Meanwhile, I was having a grand old time on
Luke's over here being like, yeah, normally I run Arch. I'm on CashOS, so it's like easier Arch. I'm just chilling.
Cashy, and since I felt more comfortable than the other two guys, I decided to get a little bit daring. I uninstalled my entire Cinnamon desktop environment on purpose.
I don't think Linus is ever going to live that one down. Like, there was a warning message that told him not to do it. Anyway, that's the last challenge.
To see if I would run into any challenges. It took about 20 minutes max before I was up and running with KDE Plasma, and my
Absolutely solid choice.
only issue was that I had to clean up some small things left over from Cinnamon, like an additional sound icon that was in the bottom tray.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how this one happened. This is a Windows example, obviously. I don't know. Maybe there's like a widget it would have loaded, but I don't know why that would have been loaded also on KDE. My best guess there is there's like an auto-starting application that also controls your sound. For some reason, CashOS had that with Cinnamon. Besides that, it wouldn't be a widget in KDE. That wouldn't make any sense. So I'm not fully sure on that one.
Because I had two sound icons and they could conflict and stuff, and that was honestly also really easy to do, so no big deal. As for my gaming adventures, my first real challenge in this Linux challenge was probably my own fault. I had read some stuff online saying that I could do it, but I think I was trying to be a little bit more optimistic than realistic. I had a Windows game drive.
Now, logically, it seems like this should work, right? You have the games installed, the games are there, they're on a drive, you can access the data. All things should be good. Until files start breaking, until files start corrupting. It's not that it cannot be done. You can game with an NTFS drive on Linux. The NTFS driver is getting better. My recommendation? Just don't. I know it seems like it should work, but just don't even consider. Even if you're like an experienced Linux user, it is not worth the hassle.
Previously, that I just kind of left alone and tried to use on Linux, which means that it was formatted in NTFS. I just added it to my Steam library in Linux and tried to go.
Exactly, it looks like it should work.
All my games
Oh, so that was a Windows video.
showed up perfect and everything seemed fine at first. Some games even ran okay, but I started to notice some glitches, and even some games that I had freshly installed on that drive just wouldn't work. It would just, you click play and it just wouldn't launch sometimes. It turns out that while Linux can still use NTFS, and there's been some ongoing development to make it even smoother, even since we started this challenge, I can say in my experience, it was kind of rough, especially when used with Proton. Proton doesn't seem to like it. So in my opinion, if you want to play games off of an NTFS drive, just don't. At least not right now.
Even in cases where it does work and you're not corrupting files and things aren't breaking, you are still going to run into performance issues, especially on slower drives. The driver is just not ready to do this. It's okay for doing file transfers, for dealing with documents, things like that, but anything where it's performance critical, just don't. Just don't.
My gaming experiences were mostly smooth, with two major exceptions though. One of which I'm actually gonna save for the conclusion, because it's kind of a spicy one, so make sure you get subscribed for that. But the other was actually the first game that I tried to fully play on Linux, Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. I wanted to stream it, but I was getting no audio and no picture.
Thankfully, this has become an increasingly rare problem with modern games, but we'll get into the problem in just a moment.
Which is not ideal for a stream. Oh no, are we not gonna be able to play? But then it suddenly just popped in and started working fine. I played it for a little while, and then the same thing happened again.
Look, all the friends are here. Isn't this amazing? Oh.
Well, it turns out that the pre-rendered cutscenes weren't working.
Yep.
Proton, which is the compatibility layer
Yep.
that allows non-native Linux titles to work on Linux, is missing proprietary licenses for H.264 and H.265 video codecs.
And a lot of distros do not include them by default because they're proprietary codecs and somebody has to pay the license. And if it's not the operating system provider and it is not you as the user, nobody's paying for them. And that gets into the way of weird patent issues. Now, for a long time, distros were kind of just shipping them anyway. There is an implementation in, projects like FFmpeg, but they realized this is kind of a ticking time bomb, and it's probably fine. But if it ever comes up that it's like, hey, you're shipping this codec that you should be paying a license fee for, none of the distros have the money to shill out a few $1 million for their users.
What was the solution? A community fork called Proton GE, which thankfully was in the Bazzite store.
You do not need to use Proton Plus. Proton Plus is a nice interface to make it easier to install. If you just go to the GitHub, you can download the releases. There are instructions right here to do it manually. It's just a matter of taking the file, putting it into the directory inside your compatibility tools in Steam, and that's pretty much it. However, tools like Proton Plus, Proton Up, various other things do make it very easy to install them, along with various other compatibility tools you might want to be using.
That's a pretty simple fix, but it's also one that highlights how unrealistic some Linux evangelists can be about the experience. No, in many cases, it doesn't just work out of the box, and users who don't treat fixing their operating system as a hobby will be looking for someone to blame for this hassle.
I don't really think there's any reason to look for someone to blame. I think if you're going to be gaming on Linux, you have to approach it in a slightly different way. You have to approach it in the fact that you are doing something which is not supported by the game developers. And the best thing you can do there is start to learn how to deal with these problems, right? My recommendation, firstly, always keep the latest version of Proton GE around. It's a general good idea. A lot of games will just run better. It's not just the codec stuff. There's some various other changes that are made to make things run better. The second thing I'd recommend is ProtonDB. This is a community collection of, hey, does this game work? Does this game not work? If the game doesn't work, what changes do you need to make? If it does work, how do you make it run better? For example, let's try the Trails games. Let's go, let's go with the reboot. So this has a platinum, and even then, there's people that are saying they're running different versions of Proton. This is a different way of getting involved in gaming than you would on Windows. But this is something which, if you're going to game on Linux, you do need to keep in mind. If this sounds like too much of a hassle, gaming on Linux just might not be for you. Things are way better than they used to be, but there is still some issues around the edges. Most things do work, but you will run into cases where you do need to check things.
So is it Linux? Valve? Mob Entertainment?
He's going to have a very different opinion here. I do actually put some of the blame on Mob Entertainment. I'd give leeway for an older game. For example, the DMC collection. So this has the exact same problem where cutscenes may not load. Maybe it's fixed now, but at least when I played it, it had this problem. This game, Poppy's Playtime Chapter 5, came out in February of 2026. There is frankly no reason to be using a proprietary video codec in a game in the current year. I cannot even think of the last game that actually had this problem. It is such a rare thing nowadays.
The user? Maybe all? Or
It's not the user's problem, definitely not.
None?
You gotta fix it, though.
It's easy to jump on the blame bandwagon and hate on some developers for not prioritizing Linux. But ask yourself this.
It's not even just prioritizing Linux. I think it's just generally a good idea to focus on open codecs, because if there comes a point where Windows says, oh, we're just not going to support H.264 now, you just don't have an option there because it's a proprietary codec.
If 50% of your customers were on Windows and the other 48% are on Xbox and PlayStation, would you be stoked on hiring a fourth group of employees whose job it is to deal with the other 2%? Especially
what actually has been noted with Linux users is a lot of them report issues at a much higher rate than their user base would indicate. And this isn't necessarily because there are more problems with Linux. In some cases, there certainly are. But even with software that is well supported on Linux, with games that are well supported on Linux, Linux users seem to be a lot more acclimatized to reporting issues because, you know, we hang around bug trackers more often, GitHub pages, and various other things where bug reporting is a lot more normal. Whereas on Windows, if a software crashes, a lot of people just, you know, it crashes, they just reload it.
Knowing that those 2% are not running one OS, but are probably running different flavors of OS?
It's not as much of a problem now thanks to the whole Steam runtime, stuff like that, but sure, I'll give you that.
I mean, maybe you would, but it's more important to remember that just like the users, many companies don't treat fixing operating systems like a hobby. Okay, so then we blame Valve. No, obviously not.
If Valve could fix the problem, they absolutely would. This is a licensing problem. It's a very expensive problem, and I do kind of wish that H.264 was quite a bit more open, but that's not the world we live in, sadly.
It's super cool that they have put so much support into Proton, but the fact that they've paid so much already is not a good argument that they should just obviously pay even more for these commercial video codecs. The point I'm trying to make here is that enjoying the Linux experience requires a no-blame mindset. Some stuff's gonna work, and some stuff won't. It's not anybody's fault.
I do like the happy vibes, but at the end of the day, the blame has to fall somewhere. But with that being the case, that doesn't mean you should go harass people, right? At the end of the day, you're the one who has to run the system. You're gonna have to deal with the problem. It doesn't really matter whose fault it ultimately is, because it's your PC. You're the only one who's gonna have the power to fix it.
Everyone is doing their best.
Well, yeah, except these guys, or Apex, or Battlefield, or a number of games which have explicitly said, we are not gonna support Linux. Screw you.
So with that in mind, throw out what I said earlier, because I'm not mad at System 76.
I feel like this part, again, is explicitly here because there are people that think that Linus was a psyop.
In fact, I left Pop! OS on my main desktop just for the lulz, and it mostly worked for most things. With that said,
Is that not his main desktop? Because this is running Cosmic.
when it came time to install Linux on my other systems, I did opt for something different. Starting with Bazzite on my home theater PC. It's just too bad the Linux curse followed me there as well. Bazzite has different versions of their installer, depending on the brand of your GPU and whether or not you want the SteamOS full screen experience.
I actually don't think they should even be shipping the game mode variant for NVIDIA GPUs, and you'll see in just a moment.
Well, I've got an NVIDIA GPU, and yeah, I want that experience. That's kind of the point of it on a home theater PC. So I picked this one. And,
Yeah, this is a problem with game mode on video cards.
let's put it this way.
Not just with Bazzite.
The Bazzite team feels that I should have known the one that I selected would result in a completely unusable experience.
Now, again, this will be a common trend with the Linus side. There is a red warning right here explicitly saying, Steam Gaming Mode support is available for your hardware in beta, but multiple known issues exist in these builds. Please note the majority of bugs cannot be fixed except by your GPU manufacturer. Now, I don't think this version should be shipped in the first place. But they do have a warning there, so yes, you actually should be aware of it.
But to me, that's actually not that obvious. Coming from the Windows, Google, normie world, where a stable service like Gmail was labeled beta for 5 years, it's not that unreasonable to think that you can daily drive a beta and have a mostly functioning experience.
I think there's a problem separate from Linus, and this is something I just genuinely hate about what has been done to software development names. A lot of AAA game studios have completely ruined the term beta. Know if it is a week before the game comes out, it is not an alpha, it is not a beta, that is a free weekend, that is a demo. If you're shipping a beta a week before the game comes out, you are utterly insane or you are misusing the term. Minecraft is another game which kind of did a lot of damage to the terms. Minecraft was in alpha and beta for a very, very long time, and those games were effectively full release. They were not alpha versions, they were not beta versions, they just didn't have as many features as they have today. In the FOSS space, in the open source space, when we say beta, we typically do actually mean beta. This is software which is not ready. This is not an early release, an early access. This is the beta build. This is the alpha build. It's gonna crash. It's gonna be buggy. But again, I cannot fault Linus for not knowing this because the entire software industry has done irreparable damage to these terms.
In Linux, that's an expectation that needs to be completely thrown out the window. Here, beta seems to mean this is broken.
Yes.
And if you're not a developer,
That's what beta does mean. Or it should mean. Or it did mean. Until beta sounded better than demo.
you should probably just download the LTS, which might also be beta.
It was not beta still.
Haha, clearly we've got to reach a
But it probably should be. But it probably should be.
middle ground here, and Bazzite seems to agree because they have updated the messaging on their site.
So what they've done is they have a giant anti-Linus warning. What they have now is they have the message. This is cooked. This is broken. If you're not a developer, don't run this. You have to click, yes, I understand. I want to proceed. And then it lets you download it. It doesn't even let you download it unless you agree. However, considering what happened with Pop! OS the first time, I don't even think that this is enough. I honestly think they shouldn't even have it in their main download page until it is, like, known to be ready, because he's just gonna click through it again without reading it.
Anyway, that happened later, so to get my system up and running, I ended up doing what many Linux people do and switching to a Radeon card, which...
Obviously, buying hardware is expensive, and most people don't just have GPUs lying around. But if you want to do game mode, you pretty much are going to have to do AMD. Like, you just don't have much of a choice.
was completely painless.
Why run Bazzite when I could just run SteamOS
At least it's a machine it was already installed on.
on the Steam machine that we built on this channel like a couple months ago? I can't believe I forgot about this thing. I've been meaning to install it.
I actually ended up throwing SteamOS on my home theater PC.
Nice. Okay, is it a bit of a hack to just
Yes.
switch out your hardware? Yes, but also no, because a lot of Linux gamers would go out of their way to choose compatible hardware in the first place. So
Yeah, my first machine I had on Linux was just my old Windows machine. It had an AMD card because I bought an AMD card at the time, but I think most people, if they decide to swap to Linux, the thing they buy next, generally they're going to take into consideration, I am on Linux now, I'm going to buy the thing that makes more sense. Now, some people still buy NVIDIA cards because CUDA and NVIDIA and they're made of money and all this stuff, but if you know you're on Linux now, you can make considerations around the fact that you're on Linux.
I'm pretending I did that. First, I want to see how well this integrates with my system here. Let's hit power toggle for the PC. No way. Did Valve seriously bake in support for this old Microsoft IR receiver?
Probably not. So I looked it up. This seems to be part of an upstream driver called MCE USB. This is for a bunch of these IR blasters. The Microsoft ones are included. Regardless, it's still really neat that it kind of just works and you don't need to install some user space software. It just does its thing.
Which was child's play to get working, and it's been kind of awesome from the couch. Nothing further to report there. As for my laptop, I decided it was finally time to practice what I preach and go for good old-fashioned, trustworthy Ubuntu. Sort of. Kubuntu is
Again, going with the KDE choice.
actually Ubuntu, but with the KDE desktop environment, which I find quite comfortable to navigate. Sort of. I mean, first I have to get to the desktop, and day one was kind of terrible. After completing setup, it just black screened, and it sat there for hours. And I was like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. Then I came down in the morning, and it was like Santa had visited.
So this isn't just a Kubuntu thing. This can happen with any distro. It's a combination of a bunch of different things, installing a new operating system, secure boot stuff, drivers initialize. There's a million different things that could cause this. Just wait. As long as the system is on, as long as there's like power to the screen, just wait. It's probably going to be fine. Just don't do it when you necessarily need the system right away. This is not a Linus problem. This has happened to me a bunch of times before as well. Not that long, but I have had to wait like over an hour in some cases for things to just work.
Because it was magically sitting at the login screen, and it's been downright pretty solid ever since, with a bit of a learning curve. For example, I did run into issues getting some applications to work due to downloading the wrong package.
This is a problem which even trips up regular active Linux users.
Debian packages, snap packages, and flatpaks will all work on Kubuntu. But I figured, okay, well, Debian makes the most sense since Kubuntu is based on Debian. But then after I installed OBS, I realized I had no option to select the display that I wanted to screen capture. The solution.
Okay. So this is a big part of the reason why I wanted to make this video. This is a Linus problem. This is entirely Linus conceived.
Debian makes the most sense.
Let's have a look at this again.
Kubuntu is based on Debian. But then after I installed OBS...
Which window is this? This is Video Capture Device Pipewire. What he has selected is, I'll show you. So down here, we have a couple of options. Video Device Capture Pipewire, Video Capture Device V4L2, and Screen Capture. The one that he has selected is the one for capturing webcams, the one for capturing capture cards, the one for capturing video devices. He selected the wrong option. The option you select here is called Screen Capture. The one saving grace I will provide him is OBS does have a inconsistent naming scheme between all of the operating systems. However, once you've selected the wrong option and realized it didn't work, you probably should have just selected the other option in the list. That's literally all that's happened here.
I had no option to select the display that I wanted to screen capture. The solution? Use the Flatpak installer.
You should use the Flatpak anyway, but that wasn't the solution.
Apparently. Okay, but where? The top result, as far as I can tell, doesn't convey that it's a Flatpak. Oh, right. I need to enable Flatpak search. Except that wasn't the solution either because Wayland...
So, okay, we'll get to
but
that.
Where?
It doesn't convey that it's a
The
Flatpak.
solution?
Central repository of Flatpak applications. I don't know what else could convey that it's a Flatpak besides it's saying it's a Flatpak. Another Linus problem. Now, possibly this is the editors that are screwing him over with the way the footage is being shown. But if this is actually how things went down, like, that's actually just you not reading. So, my general recommendation with installing packages is if there is an official package that you can use on your distro, you probably should go with that one. Now, is that what I always do? No, but this is another one of those things which you kind of learn over time. OBS, though, just use the Flatpak. Don't even think about the other ones, just use the Flatpak.
Use the Flatpak installer, apparently. Okay, but where? The top result, as far as I can tell, doesn't convey that it's a Flatpak. Oh, right. I need to enable Flatpak search. Except that wasn't the solution either because Wayland, which Kubuntu uses as part of its desktop environment, has a privacy thing built in.
How has this managed to infect Linus? Well, I know how it's managed to infect Linus. It's because there's a lot of bad information out there about Wayland Screen Capture. Screen Capture works totally fine on Wayland. It's worked in OBS for about 6 years now. This is not a problem. This is not a problem whatsoever. You're on Kubuntu, so it'll have all of the stuff installed for you. If you just select the screen capture setting, the screen capture setting is going to work. Now, if that option is for whatever reason missing, I could explain how to reboot the portal and do all that stuff, but if the option's missing, if you're on Kubuntu, which installs all the stuff for you, just reboot, just log out, and that will reload the portal for you. But in this case, it legitimately seems like Linus actually just selected the wrong setting, and then the wrong setting didn't work because it was the wrong setting.
And that no-like-key screen capture. Now, it can be worked around, but threads like this one are a great example of how troubleshooting can often be a
Yes, this is a thread that is confusing. I will grant Linus this.
guess and check experience, because there are like 5 different solutions in here, and I actually can no longer remember which one worked.
Yeah, so I'll grant Linus this. There's a lot of bad information out there about Wayland, about OBS screen capture on Wayland, because there's a lot of people out there who are, I guess, ideologically opposed to Wayland and just want to propagate out bad information. This part I will grant Linus. I do wish there was just more honest information about the current state of things, especially the information that is just older. This is, in some cases it was right at the time, but in a lot of cases it was even wrong back then, and people just had misconfigured systems.
Of course, though, it's important to point out that every problem that we're having with Linux can also be a problem with Windows.
But the fact that Microslop is also bad doesn't mean that we shouldn't be honest about issues or like level of tinkering required with Linux.
Sure.
My laptop, for example, running Mint and
I do think it is, for the problems that are actually problems and not just problems of Linus not being able to read, I do think it is a good idea to be honest about the problems that do exist.
a very simple use case of basically just loading a browser hasn't required any tinkering this whole time and hasn't really had any problems. My desktop running CachyOS, I've intentionally tried to like put myself in harm's way and ran into some really complex scenarios that have been fun to diagnose and work through. But there are things that are quite simple on Windows and very easy to do that are more complicated
Sure.
on Linux. And that's okay. But trying to hide that fact in order to recruit more Windows users to join the community, I think does more harm than good.
No, that is fair. That is absolutely fair. At the same time, though, I think there are people on Linux who do a disservice to Linux in itself as well by overplaying the problems. Like, there's two kinds of sides here, right? There's people that underplay problems which do exist, and then people who overplay problems that don't really exist, and both of them create this situation where it's really hard to get clear information out there about what is everything actually like.
Especially when they are, unfortunately, fairly often met with hostility from the community when they then run into these problems and are unequipped to deal with them. I think there are some obviously extremely bright lights in the Linux community that bring a lot of hope and joy and fun to the whole experience of learning Linux, but there is a lot of negative.
Yeah, there's a lot of garbage to sift through that's, again, unless you know how to sift through it, it's impossible to work out what exactly is worth listening to.
Communication on forums, on Reddit, elsewhere. It's very off-putting for new Linux community members, which we're going to be seeing a lot more of soon.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with the Steam Machine. I think it's going to be a big boost like we saw with the Steam Deck, with a lot of people not just using the Steam Machine, but trying out Linux because they know that the Steam Machine is supporting things well.
Receive that type of energy. The biggest thing that didn't work for me was just software compatibility.
Luke is literally just a Linux user.
But with some time and effort, I did manage to find either an alternative way to get the Windows native version working for my admittedly somewhat basic software suite.
I didn't. I use Adobe Premiere for editing. And
Yeah, give up. Adobe does not give any cares towards Linux. Yeah, no one can help you there. There's been some kind of jank ways to maybe make it work in some cases, but they're jank and they don't work for all versions. Yeah, Adobe is Adobe.
one of the many fun ways that Adobe is kind of ass is that it just doesn't work on Linux. Now, I tried messing around with Bottles a bit, which allows you to run Windows software on Linux. but that
Not
was
Adobe.
obviously still a
Some versions of Adobe, but generally not.
no-go, which then sent me looking for alternatives. DaVinci Resolve has a Linux build,
They
though
do.
it's only officially supported on Rocky Linux of all things.
CentOS is the main focus there. CentOS is basically unbranded Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's a little bit different, but effectively that's what it is. So this is for the it's for the enterprise distro.
Still, Rocky Linux is a lot closer to Bazzite than Windows is, so maybe? And yeah, after 2 hours of trying, I got her up and running, but not the way I thought. See, I just tried installing it like a Windows application. Download and run. But Bazzite, as I learned, is an immutable operating system.
Immutability, atomic systems, all this stuff I think are neat. But if you go into them without knowing their limitations and you try to treat them like a regular distro, you are going to be tripped up very quickly. If you're treating it like an appliance, right? If you're the kind of person who does everything in a browser, or you just, it like SteamOS, you're playing all your games in Steam or various other game clients, it's going to be totally fine. But when you want to start stepping outside of that, it creates problems which are hard to solve unless you're an experienced user. They can be solved, but when you want to start modifying the image, then you're really getting into effectively DevOps stuff, which is not something most people are ever going to touch.
Similar to SteamOS. This means core operating system files and permissions are locked down in such a way that the user either can't screw them up, or they can, but then they'll reset themselves after a reboot. Unfortunately, this same lockdown applies to some software installers, which then means that they can't alter the files that they need to. The solution was for me to beat my head against a wall.
Good plan.
Until I found this 6-minute video about a simple command to run. Hey,
So DaVinci is kind of wonky even on regular distros. DaVinci is very, very sensitive to dependencies. My recommendation, if you ever want to use DaVinci, there is a project, there's a number of projects like this, but there's one project called DaVinci Box. This basically runs DaVinci Resolve in a container and usually is fine. It's not going to be perfect, but usually going to be better than what you're going to see trying to install it manually.
software installed. But then I ran into the same problem as Poppy Playtime. Depending on the file that I was trying to play or export, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, there is a fee for these codecs. Somebody is going to have to pay for the fee for the codecs. Your distro's not paying for them. If the distro's not shipping them, then you kind of have to deal with that. If you pay for DaVinci, well, then you're paying for the codecs as well, and now the problem doesn't exist. But then you got to pay $300 to use DaVinci. Yeah. If you can work with open codecs, work with open codecs. But it's an expectation that you need to know about, and not something that's immediately going to be obvious without you having done the research previously.
Frickin' curse you, video codecs. So I then tried Kdenlive, which is fine for
Fine is about how I would describe Kdenlive.
basic editing, but if I want to be a power user, it's just not quite there yet. And for stills, neither is GIMP. You know what? I'm gonna be the one to say it. GIMP sucks.
I use GIMP for thumbnails. It's totally fine. If we're talking photography, if we're talking complex graphics design, sure, it certainly has some problems.
With that said, I still want to emphasize the gratitude that I feel, and you, Elijah, I know you feel it too, toward the open source community. Whether it's applications, or drivers, or Linux in general, the fact that people are stepping up against the corporate overlords who are limiting our choices, feasting on our wallets, and then spying on us for good measure is amazing, and it's admirable. However, context matters. And when we're evaluating the experience of switching to Linux, we're doing so from a user perspective. And so we do have to point out things that might not be ideal. Just try to understand.
Outside of the cases of Linus not reading, I do agree with this point here. Completely agree. There's no point hiding issues. People are going to run into them when they use it anyway.
That it comes from a place of love and appreciation, not from a place of hate. Everybody involved in the Linux challenge today is rooting for Linux to succeed. And it's actually been really exciting to see so many social media posts of people who have joined the challenge alongside us, even though we didn't ask anybody to.
What is that name?
But as exciting as all of that is, part of succeeding in this is taking off the blinders and being honest about the areas where things need to improve. And it's actually been pretty cool to see that some of our observations are already resulting in clearer documentation that's going to help pave the path for future users. Now, I know we're releasing part 2, like, way past the 1 month
this is like the
already.
90-day Linux challenge by this point. Probably going to be like 150-day challenge at the rate we're going.
Ready? Elijah was busy fixing our environmental chamber, among other things, but we do still have more videos lined up for the series, and as you guys can see, even though we're past the month, there will be some surprises in the future parts. Part 3 is going to have us do some fun challenges, and then part 4 is going to be the conclusion, where we sit down on the couch together and talk about our final thoughts.
And I will absolutely be there for it. I feel like this part, again, besides some of the issues, which were just not issues that Linus had, I feel like this part was taken quite a bit more seriously. I do not like the way that Linus originally handled it. I know he has like a busy schedule and it's hard to fit things in, but I'm at least happy that Linus was willing to address the way that part was handled. I don't think he's trying to say, Linux is bad, Linux sucks, and wow, this is all like, oh, this is some big psyop to make people hate Linux. But I do think that the first part could have been handled better. And that may have alleviated some of the issues Linus had. Now, he certainly would have had issues. He's having issues with Pop! OS and Cosmic, but I think it would have been more of a focus on those issues rather than just Linus trying to install things in a stressful environment and then freaking out because people were waiting for him to join a game lobby. But what are your thoughts on this part? Did you enjoy it more? Did you think things were handled well? What would you like to see in the future? And are you excited to see how the rest of this goes? Because I certainly am. So let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribes, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and watch it break again.